Welcome back to Beyond the Headline, everyone. It's an exciting and slightly mind-blowing day to be with us because I'm here with Brian Billingsley, the CEO of Klarna North America. Brian, thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks so much for having us. Excited to be here.
Brian, I shared with you my shock and delight when I used Klarna for the first time. Can you introduce us into how it works?
Sure, absolutely. So, Klarna at the end of the day is a payments company, but we're a payments company that believes actually payments is quite boring. And, actually what makes payments exciting again is how do you make the buying experience for an online merchant completely seamless and amazing. So hopefully the experience that you had was when you got to the checkout page after you spent time shopping on the website, instead of seeing the 50 fields or the need to remember a username and password or to create a username and password, it was really just a very simple experience where you just had to enter in a couple pieces of information. And then if we hadn't seen you before, maybe a few more fields, but always top of mind information. And then you can just hit the buy button and you're done. So, our goal is, how do you make the checkout experience when a consumer has done all the work to get all the way to that point of purchase, to give them, for a small dollar purchase, just the ease of hitting buy, all the way up to if they're going to spend a lot of money on a purchase, to make that consumer educated that they can actually pay with their credit card, they can pay with their bank account, or they can pay via installments or other credit products with Klarna to make their buying experience as easy as possible.
And it was very timely for me to test out Klarna because this past week I've gone on Amazon three times to order cashew butter, which I need to eat.
Yep.
And I haven't ordered it because I can't remember my password. So the hassle of going to figure out where that is has just been lost on me. So I haven't ordered it. And what it really opened my eyes to, which is what you guys are sharing with your merchants, is that this isn't about convenience for me. It's about conversion for them.
That's right. No, that's absolutely right. And there's a lot of reasons why consumers abandon the checkout. There's a small percentage that want to see what's the shipping cost or the tax cost. But in every consumer test that we do, the vast majority of the reason why consumers abandon, why they've already gotten all the way to the point where they've put something in the cart and they want to buy something, is either they can't remember their username and password, they left their wallet upstairs, if they're on the mobile device, which actually most of our merchants are seeing 50 to 60% or more of their overall web traffic coming on the mobile device. In many cases, if they're on their mobile device, they are not in a place where they feel comfortable pulling their credit card out. If they're on the Muni or they're on the bus into work, they don't want to have their credit card out where other people can see it. So those are the majority of reasons why consumers just don't want to consummate the purchase when they've already gone through the trouble of putting something in the cart. And we've actually, in our user test, seen people take a screenshot on their phone of the product they want, email it to themselves or text it to themselves so they can come back on a desktop later. And I think that, just as we've been able to prove, because our mobile conversion is actually on par, in some cases better than our desktop conversion, people will buy on mobile if we let them. It's just that the experience that consumers have had up to this point is it's a very poor experience to check out.
I think it's a really poor experience, and something you and I were just discussing that I've really admired about your team's approach is Klarna is not just for big players like Overstock, who's the first company you guys partnered with when you came to the US. It's for small companies. And as we were just saying, small companies need this. When you're trying to sell every piece of product you can, you don't want to lose 70 to 80% of people who are abandoning checkout. You can't.
No, absolutely. And the beauty of, Klarna does really two things for you, especially if you're a small to medium-sized business where you're scaling and you're starting to think about, do I have to hire a fraud person? Do I need to hire more customer service representatives to work the pending queues or to call people to actually validate that they're the person that made the purchase? Klarna on the front end, because our user experience is so seamless and we use credit to make checkout that much more simple, you get more conversion on the front end. Then also Klarna takes the full risk on the transaction on the back end. So you get the conversion through the funnel, and then Klarna takes the full risk, so you as a merchant don't have to worry about working fraud or pending queues or chargebacks. Klarna takes care of all that for you, so you can really be strategic on the people that you bring on and the team that you build as you're a growing merchant, that you can focus on what's core to your business, on product strategy, marketing strategy, discount strategy, and not be using precious resources and dollars to hire more operation-centric folks when you don't actually need them yet.
And I think it also lends to, we talk a lot today about, hey, if someone abandons checkout, send them an email reminding them.
Hmm.
I don't think I have ever purchased something when I've been sent an email because I kind of have that attitude of I didn't buy it in the first place, I'm not going to buy it now.
Yeah.
And you're really helping eliminate that. It's a small part of it, but I think psychologically it's a big one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even for the people that are retargeted with an email, we can actually make it, if we've ever seen that consumer before in the merchant's checkout, instead of that consumer having to go to the product page and fill in all their information, we can literally turn it into a one-tap experience. So from the retargeting email to the checkout is 2 taps on your phone instead of, filling in 50 fields of information.
Something else that you've discussed in a past interview that rang true to me is Klarna also makes you feel like an insider
Mm.
because it's like Amazon Prime and I get to just do one click and it's with any retailer. How has that helped you guys?
No, I think that's something as we talk with consumers and as we're really working on our consumer strategy in the U.S. I think you touched on a really interesting point because in the Nordics and a lot of our European markets, the whole invoice concept or pay after delivery is pretty common. In the U.S., it's definitely, people aren't used to paying with invoice. But what we see is consumers feel like they're a VIP or they're a preferred customer because, kind of like the old Cheers show where everyone knows your name. It's kind of like you can walk in and take what you want and just wave at the person at the cash register and just walk out because we know who you are and we trust you and we know that you'll pay later. So a lot of our merchants that are working with us already in the U.S. are starting to kind of brand that concept that it's a VIP like experience that you can just walk in, get your products, and walk out, and we know that you'll pay us, right then and there or sometime in the future.
And I think it has a lot to do with me coming back because if I have that first experience and it's easy,
Mm.
the next time I need something, there's going to be no question for me to head back to that site.
No, exactly. And that's what we want. We want to be the Amazon one click for the entire web. So where most consumers aren't willing to download 100 merchant apps on their mobile device, but they still want that. The millennials want that one click experience, the very quick experience, no matter if they're buying through an app or through the web. And so we want to give that one click seamless experience to every merchant, really level the playing field.
And once you do, I think what happens is Klarna just becomes the back end for all of our e-commerce interactions. And something you and I were discussing is that you guys don't have a lot of branding all
Mm.
around. So when I was on
Yep.
Overstock, I didn't see anything that said Klarna where I was supposed to, input my name and email. Why has that been important?
Sure. So I think, it kind of goes to our number one passion and goal is to help merchants drive conversion for them on their web and mobile sites and to give their customers a great experience. And so what we don't believe is a great experience is when consumers gotten all the way through the flow and they get hit over the head with
Pop up.
offers or pop-ups or sign up for this account or do this or do that. I think that really frustrates the merchants and it frustrates the consumers as well. If someone gets all the way to checkout and someone's ready to hit buy and we pop a big Klarna banner, that's not what we want to do. We want to just give, the first interaction to Klarna or interaction, excuse me, with Klarna for consumers, just this realization that this checkout is much easier to deal with. And then, they kind of get subtly introduced to Klarna via the confirmation emails or the, hey, it's time to pay now emails. But the great thing is a merchant, so the merchant gets all the benefit of the great buying experience, but then any of the less fun conversations that happen in payments, your card bounced, your card was declined, your bank account, we got a non-sufficient funds notice from your bank. Klarna takes all of those more frustrating discussions away from the merchant, and we give consumers a great experience even when it's a less than fun conversation. So now the merchants don't have to worry about it, and we can give white glove treatment to their consumers even when it's around a less fun payment topic. But it's really important that the merchant gets the benefit at that point of purchase, at that moment of truth for the great experience, and then Klarna is there in the background, and that the merchants know that, or the consumers know that there's this trusted company called Klarna to deal with their payments credentials, and that their data is secure, but the merchant gets the benefit for that experience.
And how about for you, Brian? So when you hear some of the stats around Klarna, it's pretty mind blowing. 220 million transactions, 250,000 transactions a day.
Yep.
Aside from those, mind blowing stats, what attracted you to the business?
Sure. So I think I'll give you the short of the long version, but really I've been in payments my entire career and started out at a boutique firm where I got to work for big and small payments companies and really found that I love the speed and the passion that I saw at the growth stage companies. And so then our boutique firm was acquired by a very large core processor. And so I went from a 20-person firm to helping run strategy for a 30,000-person company. And what I really saw two things. Maybe I was just young and naive, but one was a lot of the work I was doing was around helping payments companies and networks make more money or maintain revenue or increase revenue without necessarily doing anything innovative or new or valuable for the customer or for the merchant. And then two, I just noticed that merchants and payments companies didn't get along very well. And if there are two ecosystems that should be more symbiotic, it should be the merchants and the payments companies that help the merchants sell the goods. And you just saw that merchants and payments companies are quite at odds with each other. And so about that time, I got recruited away to a private label issuer where I spent a lot of time. And I realized that private label has its own set of issues, but the merchants see the tangible value of what a private label program brings to them, and it's much more of a partnership than just a operational need or a necessary evil. And so I thought there has to be a payments company in between that can bring both the very tangible value to merchants, but also scale like a global payments company. And I was thinking about starting my own company, but then I was introduced to Klarna through a mutual friend. And at first I was like, why are you introducing me to a Swedish invoice company? That makes no sense. But once I really understood the product and the vision, and I met Sebastian and the leadership team, it just made a ton of sense. So I jumped on board.
And Sebastian wanted you to spend a lot of time with the team there. And you said it was just instrumental to bringing Klarna to the US. Why?
Yeah, I mean, so when I joined, I actually lived in Stockholm for about 6.5 months, from about March to late July in 2014, and it's something that Sebastian was very adamant on, that I spend that much time with the team in Stockholm. And after 6 weeks being an impatient American, I was ready to come back and just get things rolling. But looking back, I think it was one of the most valuable things, investments that I can make, where I truly got to understand and learn and respect the culture, both the similarities and the differences of working with a Swedish company, and also to really get deeply ingrained in the product and the key people that now really support us. So I'm on a first name. Actually, I consider many of those people in Stockholm personal friends, and that's really helped as we've been now. The U.S. team is quite demanding on resources and time, and over the Black Friday through Cyber Monday launch, we were actually close to 10% of the volume. So we were quite
Wow.
yeah, we've done really well so far.
Congratulations.
So we've been quite demanding on resources, but we've developed that relationship where everybody's in a kind of rowing in the same direction, to use I think an overused pun, and it's something that I've also done with my team as well. So as I looked at the budget, I would say if you kind of really didn't understand or were really part of the team, you'd say, man, you're really over investing in getting people to Stockholm. But how it's played out, I think we've been able to move much, much faster and get much more done, because not just me, but my whole team and many of the U.S. team's almost 80 people now. I'd say about half of those folks have actually spent several weeks or more in Stockholm. And now everyone's built those relationships, understand the culture, understands the product, and we're able to move so much faster.
How is the culture different there than it was at the previous companies you've been at?
Sure. So I'd say, I mean, Klarna is definitely a very aggressive growth stage company. So I'd say on a stereotypical Swedish company, it's definitely on the aggressive end of the spectrum. But I'd say there's a few key things that were different. One is how they make decisions. It is a much more consensus driven than probably what I was used to. I think it's mostly good because Klarna hires great people and there's a lot of great input, but it was definitely something that took a little getting used to, is how much it definitely is more of a consensus driven culture than maybe I was used to. And I'd say just dealing with some of the practical things that come with working with a European company. Like, um, in July, most people in Stockholm take a holiday. And now, obviously, Klarna being a payments company, not it's not like no one's in the office, but it's definitely takes some getting used to on just kind of the how a European company works versus how a U.S. company works. And I think mostly is we've learned a lot, gotten a lot of value from them. So one of the things we did here in the U.S. is we have a very aggressive paternity and maternity leave policy that we kind of did before. Some of the companies just recently made the big announcements on that. I think that's incredibly valuable and something U.S. companies have missed the boat on is how much time they give the mothers and fathers to be with their kids. So to me, I think that's a huge plus that we brought over. I think the culture around, you know, I always say work-life balance doesn't mean a 40-hour work week, but it means that, at Klarna we work really, really hard. But if you have an issue or a need, or you need to take more than 4 days off to deal with a family issue, or just need to get away, that's okay. So I think infusing maybe some of the U.S. Do whatever it takes to get it done, work crazy hours, but combined with the work-life balance. I think because I've seen Klarna, they always meet their goals, they always get things done, but there is a little bit more of a work-life balance aspect to the company than maybe I'm used to in a U.S. company. So I think it's really refreshing, actually.
I think especially with that, what's important is we all have this, slight high when it's been like 4 or 5 days, you're just heads down, you're nonstop, you haven't been doing anything else. And
Mm,
then those last 2 days, you start to notice that you're making really silly mistakes. You
that's
spelled
right.
something wrong in an email. And what we need to realize is that's hurting us
Yep,
more than it's taking us anywhere.
that's right. No, absolutely. And I think everyone here has if they're feeling really burn out, that if they come and they've got all their stuff done and they need to leave a couple hours early, that go for it. Because we hire great people, and we know that their work's going to get done. And so people feel, even at a more of a junior level, feel the freedom to come and say, "Hey, I just kind of need to go chill for a couple hours, and I'll come back." I think that's what one of the great things about the culture is. There's very high expectations, but there's also a realization that we're all human, and sometimes you just need to unplug for a little bit.
Were people surprised by those types of policies when they came?
I think they were on the definitely surprised on the positive side.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, no, I think it's just something that a lot of people aren't used to. I mean, one of the things that I need to push people is to actually use them. I know there was another Swedish company that we're friends with that they rolled out some great policies, and they're mostly based in New York, and they had a hard time getting people to actually take some of the benefits like the maternity and paternity leave. And I think that just shows to maybe how over aggressive our culture is sometimes. So yeah, I think overall people have been quite receptive and delighted by some of the policies that we have.
And I know when 6 months after you spent time at Klarna HQ, you came and you were hiring very quickly, and it was a lot of senior team members.
Yeah.
How is it different to, start out with senior team members versus the whole hacker mentality of 5 people around a table?
Yeah, no, great question. And I think, it's in some ways it was a bit of that hacker scenario, but it was probably but it was with a pretty senior hacker team. So just given what Klarna does, where you're taking over all the risk, you're processing all the payments, there's credit aspects involved. So it really meant bringing together the right team that can move incredibly fast. So, being able to bring people in from Apple. So Jen Han, who was a senior payments lawyer at Apple, joined our team and has really been instrumental in helping us navigate the legal waters when it comes to how do we create a seamless experience but do it in a legal and compliant way. Also bringing in people like Smitha Mortis. She's an unbelievable um, compliance counsel from Bill Me Later. So it really understands how do you take, she went through this once before with a credit company in the U.S., going from nothing to something very quickly. And then also like Luke Tuttle, who's probably one of the best product people I've ever worked with. How do work with a global, with global teams and create a scalable solution that's secure, responsive, etc. And so being able to build that senior team that, I love to. It was one of the happiest and most fun things that I've done here at Klarna so far is build such a great team where it's all it's a lot of A players, but there are very little egos, where everyone's willing to jump in and kind of do whatever it takes. And so I think that's really the culture we built here, where people are quite good at what they do and they have a long leash to make their decisions to run fast. But there are very little egos. It's my way or the highway. So that's been really important to our success.
And when you're sitting down, especially for an interview with someone who's going to come and play a really big senior role at your company, what questions do you like to ask them?
No, great question. I mean, I spend a lot of time. By the time I talk to them, they check all the boxes from a knowledge perspective, right? Like their background is legit. They have the right skill sets. But to me, it's so important to maintain the culture that we have here. So I spend a lot of time asking them about their leadership style, like just specific examples of how they've dealt with good projects, bad projects, like what's the worst thing they've dealt with, and really understanding what that person's going to be like, when things get tough, because it's always good when when everything's going
When you hit the
smoothly.
numbers, yeah.
But really understanding what's that person trying to understand at least what's that person going to be like when we have to work the weekend, or there is an issue, or a merchant isn't happy, or there's a consumer issue, and how do we, who's going to go the extra mile to do the right thing for our merchant and the consumer. And I've really, it's something that Klarna really maintains in all of its offices. Is it does a really great job um, keeping and retaining the people that are the very highly motivated and upwardly mobile, but aren't assholes. Just to be quite frank, where they're not the ones that are leaving bodies in their wake just to hit their numbers. I think that's what I really try to get at, because they're at the table because they know their stuff, but are they really going to be additive to the culture and not detractive?
What demonstrates that grit to you during a conversation? Because I could very easily say, sure, I'm going to work on the weekends.
No, I mean sometimes it's just asking those questions of, like, specifically what have you done in these certain situations and what would you do, and not that they have to answer that question specifically how I would, but just really
Mm.
understanding that they're thoughtful. Um, how do they consider the team? How do they really increase? How do they really promote diversity and different ideas in their team? Do they seem like it's my way or the highway approach? Those I'll really push for a lot of the details on some of the specific situations that they've dealt with.
And during that, especially, whether it was now or in your past roles, what's been a really surprising answer that you've gotten in an interview?
I mean, one of the things that I actually appreciate, and this might sound bizarre, is where I'll ask a specific question and they'll just be honest and say, "I don't know, but this is how I would likely approach it." Because a lot of times you can tell when someone is just totally BSing you and they really have no idea what they're talking about. But when someone's willing, and I think many times that takes more character to just be right. You're in an interview where you're trying to really impress the person across the table, but to have the confidence in yourself to say, "I don't know," or "I haven't dealt with something specific like that, but this is how I would deal with it," or "this is a situation that was very similar." I think that's something that that I look for, and also how they talk about, especially if they're in a current role, because virtually everyone we've hired wasn't looking for a job. We've recruited them away. And how do they talk about their team? So is it always, I did this, or the team did this, or someone on my team, executed, and how they supported them. So it's really you know, how do they tell their stories? I think I'm a big believer, and I think at Klarna we're a big believer in stories. We love storytellers. But how does that person tell the story? Is it involving other people, or is it trying to take the credit for what their team did?
Photo album with everything that they've achieved.
Exactly, exactly.
Here's me doing this. So, for you, when you have been in job interviews in the past, what's the
Yep.
hardest question you've ever been asked?
Yeah, good question. The hardest. I mean, it's never fun. I mean, it's always the one where tell me, what's your biggest weakness, is probably the one that no one loves to answer when, like, because that's several of the people at Klarna, and I've got it before, but I'd say at Klarna, they several of my the people that interviewed me really drilled into where they wanted to know, what is my biggest weakness, and not that everyone has strengths and weaknesses, but how do you counter for that, and how do you build people around you to counter for what maybe you're not great at. So me specifically, I'm not, I'm probably not as, a naturally organized person as maybe I would like to be. And I definitely have a lot of work around, managing my time to 15 minutes. How do I really squeeze the most out of my day? But I've surrounded myself with people who are incredibly organized, and from a personal assistant to several of the key people on my team are just incredibly dialed in in a very granular level. And I've learned a lot from them, and they've learned a lot from me on how to think on your feet and think outside of the box, and we really can counterbalance each other. And I think the other thing is being able to just that ability to admit your strengths and your weaknesses, because everyone on my team, it's not bragging to say what you're good at, but you also need to be very clear on what you're not as good at. And as a team, that's really how you grow as a team. When you can be that open and honest with each other, is people don't mind talking as much about what they're good at, but being very clear on, this is what I'm not good at, and how you can come together and give each other that really kind of direct feedback, but in a way that so everyone's countering each other's strengths and weaknesses.
I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because something I was excited to ask you was, when you bring on senior team members who are at the top of their game, how do you as CEO empower them to get better in their role? Because they're already up here.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I think one of the things that I do and is they have a lot of ownership of how they do what they do. So several of the people that I brought on that are totally at the top of their game, but I would say they might not have had as much ownership on how to really execute in the way they see fit. So it's the number one thing is just true ownership, that they truly own their division or their area of work, and that's if things go well or if things don't go well, right? And so I think the number one is the true ownership, and two is as they build out their teams, that they truly are empowered to bring in, as long as they fit, Klarna's kind of cultural matrices, that they have the flexibility to build, their power team. And then for Klarna specifically, for my direct team, is that they get to spend a lot of time with their counterparts in Stockholm to truly understand the business. So, where they're able to learn very quickly what Klarna does today, but also they're able to quickly give input their very direct U.S. Experience. And so I think a lot of it is just the freedom to work, but also know that they truly own it, for better or for worse.
On that note, though, one of my favorite questions that I've learned is from my friend Adam Liebman over at Squad, and he wanted to know what separates the best from the very good. What
Mm.
do you think does?
What separates the best from the very good? I mean, some of it I don't know. I've just finished reading Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink, and I've just found that when you bring someone in, I mean, it's amazing how you can thin slice people and just know very quickly, like, are they a cultural fit? Do they get it or not? I would say, I think it was Warren Buffett that said 50% of the people he was 100% sure of didn't work out, and 99% of the people that he was 99% sure on didn't work out. So it's incredibly important to bring in the people that you just can really trust and really give ownership to. I'd say from the best of the best are the people that obviously are the best from a knowledge and skill set perspective, but have the character and the ability to admit when they don't know something 100%. Because where you can get in trouble is when you bring in an A player that maybe knows, that is the best of their game and knows almost everything, but they missed that one minor point because they didn't want to ask, or they didn't want to admit that they didn't know everything. And so, I mean, I've interviewed a lot of candidates that were complete rock stars, but I brought on the people that I felt like really knew their stuff, but also had the hunger to want to learn, and they're at the top of their game, but that didn't mean that there wasn't anything more to learn. It was the people that kind of knew they were good, but were humble enough to say there's a lot more I can learn. There's so many ways I can get better, and those are the people to me that are the best, where they don't think they're the best yet, and that they've got a lot more to learn, and there's a lot more a lot more value they can add as they learn.
I think that's always really telling. And it's something that I wanted to talk to you about personally because you've held many senior roles. You were just mentioning for a period of time you were helping direct strategy for a 30,000 person team. How
Hmm.
do you not let your past experiences influence that rookie mentality?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just have to be. Um, I mean, it's important to learn from your past experience. So there's some aspect of taking into consideration both what worked well and what didn't go well, but then also just really embracing the culture of your current role. And you don't want to repeat mistakes that you've gotten on that path before. You know it's not going to work this way, but then also not. I think that's one of the biggest hurdles of senior people. They come in and it's like, well, we did it this way at this company, so we have to do it this way at this company. That's one of the biggest ways to just stifle innovation and growth and moving fast is when you just assume it worked one way at this company, so it's going to work this way here or vice versa. So it's informing decisions with past experiences, but not letting them dictate your strategy.
What have been a few of your critical past experiences that have really helped you take on this role?
I think, man, there's so many, but I would say um, building, and we've touched on it a lot, but especially early on, building that core team, and not only building the team from a knowledge perspective and a skill set perspective, but actually spending the time to develop the interpersonal interactions among the team. And I'm not saying that we're doing like team building, trust fall type exercises, but actually get it being quite open and quite vulnerable with the team on, really pushing them to share stuff about their personal lives, getting them to talk about what they're good at, what they're not good at. And that kind of trust is what helps a team through some of the crazy hours that we've been putting in recently or the demands that we've been putting on one another. I think kind of building that core team that is amazing, that trusts each other implicitly is really crucial. I would say from specifically our business model, hiring really great legal and compliance talent because everyone loves to talk about innovation on the product and engineering side. That's where the obvious places to talk about it. But I think and some people could take this the wrong way, but I think you can also be innovative from a legal and compliance perspective. Not that you're doing things that are in the gray zone or illegal. It's how do you take something that's great and then how does legal and compliance help you offer the great experience to the customer, to the merchant, but doing it in a very safe, secure, and compliant way. And I think even our people in legal and compliance, it was probably some of the more difficult hires we made because we felt like we had to find, even in those roles where in many cases their whole job is to think inside the box and keep things in a box, they're still charged with keeping us compliant and safe. But how do you do that in a way where we do think outside the box? And I think that's, any company that's trying to move the needle or do things different in payments or anything in a regulated space, having the right legal and compliance support that will keep you safe but lets you be innovative is incredibly important.
Touch on the first story you shared about trust because if you don't have that building a company, I mean you've halted yourself
Mm,
before you can get started and it
sure.
enables you to have conversations that feel difficult but are with good
Yep.
intention, to get feedback. What's the most difficult but instrumental feedback you've ever received, whether it was at Klarna or in your previous roles?
Mm. Man, that's a good question. I would say I think somewhere a couple. There's been a couple times, but one specifically where a mentor really gave me some feedback on, okay, here's what you're good at, and obviously that, but it gave me some very direct insight into some of the areas where I wasn't as strong, and that from time management and also, and this was several years ago, but also how some specific ways I was negotiating some deals and interacting with the counterparties, and at first I honestly didn't take the feedback super well. I thought they were wrong, but when I really set back and tried to be objective about it, they were absolutely right. So I think it is uncomfortable to take direct feedback, especially when we've got. It's not like in many cases, especially here at Klarna, it's not like a person is really not doing well, and it's just very obvious to that person, they're not doing a good job, and here's why. It's you've got really, really great performers, but you're trying to get them to the next level. So you're, pointing out. So maybe they're great at 10 things and only bad at, or not even bad, but maybe just okay at two. But really helping them get better at those two, and really focusing on how do you make those weaknesses better. But on the flip side, I think it's really important as well to not over focus on the negatives, where you don't want to make everyone perfect at everything. It's impossible, right? So it's having the direct feedback. If something isn't up to par, you can have direct feedback, especially around interpersonal communication. I think that's the one thing for every single person, no matter what their role is, what their title is, can always get better, is how do you give and receive feedback, and how do you interact with other people. But focus on the weak spots, but don't over focus on them is what I would say.
I think that's huge, and it's what propels the team forward. And you guys have been moving extremely fast in the U.S. so far. As you look ahead to 2016, what are your goals?
Yeah, I mean, we've got some really aggressive goals for next year. So, I mean, we're already processing tens of thousands of transactions a day. Really successful, hit all of our 15 goals and really exceeded all them from a merchant signing perspective and a transactions per day goal. So, out of looking into next year, I'd say some of the big goals are, that, we'll want to process, won't give you the actual number, but millions of transactions, where some really aggressive growth goals, which means we're signing big merchants, but also some of the SMEs as well. Also building out our consumer brand. So we've really focused on the merchants first, because like you experienced when you bought something at Overstock, you get slowly introduced to Klarna, just going through the experience. And that's great, but we're going to need to start promoting our consumer brand a little more, and especially as we start to introduce some of our credit products that we'll be rolling out. And three is really growing. For me, because we built such a great team, a big focus for me is maintaining the culture that we've really created here. That as we grow from 80 people to 250 in the U.S. next year, that it still feels at some aspect like the same group of people when it was the first 10 people sitting around a a fold-up table here in the U.S. So that's really important to me. But you'll see us grow very aggressively next year.
I love it, and I know that we're all really looking forward, especially as consumers, to see how everything is going to play out as you guys champion that. Before we go, Brian, we always touch on just 3 questions that don't have anything to do with work. And they're
Sure.
a lot easier than like the best feedback you've ever received. Question 1, if you were a song, what song would you be?
Man, if I was a song, what song would I be? So, something by, I have a really diverse musical taste, everything from classic to hard rock and everything in between. But one of my favorite musical experiences was an outdoor concert by James Taylor, where he played for 3 hours straight. So I think a good song like Copperline or something like that from James Taylor might be the right choice.
Perfect. What is the best gift you've ever received?
Best gift I've ever received. When my wife said yes to marrying me. So I've got probably that, and then I have 3 beautiful little girls. So each of them were
You
great
are
gifts.
lucky.
I am. I've got a household of women. I couldn't be happier.
Last one. If you could give everyone a fortune cookie with your favorite saying on it, what would you write inside?
Oof.
No pressure.
Yeah, no, I think a good line, and it's maybe a little, maybe a little canned, but it's like, pray like everything depends on God, and work like everything depends on you, because I think there is some aspect of both that's really important. Faith is important, but also hard work is really important, and some combination of the two, I think, is what works.
I love that, and I think it's a perfect way to end. How can everyone stay up to date with you, stay up to date with Klarna, and for individuals or merchants who really want to learn more, where's the best place for them to go?
No, sure. So there'll be a lot more press coming out in the coming months. So please keep your eyes peeled to the press. But please visit Klarna.com, specifically Klarna.com/US. There's also links there for you to contact us for sales questions or just general questions, whether you have, around the product or whether you're interested in using us on your web store. And then also merchants like Overstock and Shoes.com and others, you can just go and buy something and check it out for yourself. Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks so much. It was great spending time with you.